161st Street, Yankee Stadium.
Swung on and hit there. Then he center. Gets back, away back. She is gone.
All right, welcome on back to the Boys of 161st Street. This is episode 234, and tomorrow is the start of the postseason for the Yankees. But before that, in kind of one fell swoop, the Mets and the Blue Jays and the Rays all were eliminated. So pretty good day for us. The movie for Vladdy Jr. ended a little early there, unfortunately for him. In his house too, was it not? No.
Yes, it was.
It was in his house. That's unfortunate, but it was a pretty good movie for us. So we are taking on the Cleveland Guardians. Honestly, like we mentioned before on the last episode and just previous episodes, I feel like I personally would have preferred to see the Rays. I know a lot of people don't really feel that way because we struggle against the Rays and go into the Trop. So mixed feelings, definitely. I don't know. I would have rather faced any of these teams coming out of that wild card round as opposed to the Mariners. So I guess that's a silver lining there because I do think that they can actually make a deep run. But lots to discuss here. Lineup talk. Chapman not making the roster and is just previewing this series as a whole. But before we get into that stuff, how are we doing, fellas? We got a full house today.
Aside from somebody telling me they're going to murder me today, I'm doing pretty well.
What, those regular Tuesday in New York?
Yeah, you get used to that.
Yeah. I mean, it was my fault. I was crossing the street, so.
Yeah, can't do that.
Yeah.
How dare you?
We're in the
What an
crosswalk.
asshole I am. No, I was in the crosswalk with the little go walking guy, and yeah.
Well, yeah, shame on you.
I mean, I
Yeah.
totally had it coming. It was my fault.
Yeah.
But
So how's everybody else doing other than that?
Idiot. Great. A little nervous about
I
tomorrow.
can't wait for this time tomorrow. That's it.
Yeah, kind of wild. This kind of really just came up pretty fast. And I don't know. Let's just start here. Let's say, what's the overall feeling out of 10 going into this? I guess just confidence level. I know we've gauged that at a large amount of points throughout the season, but I want to see how you guys are feeling now actually knowing who we're going against. First game, Cal Quantrill versus Garrett Cole. Obviously knowing what Garrett Cole has recently been doing and just blowing up after a perfect game and not really looking too great. So how do we feel?
6.4.
That's
I think that's so fair. I think that's right on the money.
I'm feeling a lot worse than what the odds are. Gee, the odds are minus
oh my god,
210 for the Yankees. If you were a
Jesus
betting
Christ,
man,
they moved that much?
if you were a betting man and didn't have bias towards the Yankees, you should take the Guardians.
I'm taking a little bit.
I
of a
say that
happiness
from
hedge.
strictly
I'm taking
betting
them to win. I'm
perspective.
taking the Guardians to win the series. That's a
I mean,
happiness.
Don't
I
do that.
can't,
Like,
I can't
don't
argue
do
with
that.
It makes
No,
sense.
this is not how we should start this episode off. All right.
Murph, we did the
appreciate
whole
the effort
Come on,
in
dude.
that,
we
but
did
come
the
on.
whole thing with the picking the Astros to win the World Series.
Dude.
Posted the whole thing. Let's just not go down that
Listen,
path again, or at least
How much would you pay for the Yankees to win this series?
how much would I pay?
You had to pay right now.
I
Is
know
it
what
like
you're
a
saying, so-
realistic price, or is it?
Yeah, but I'm saying
Like-
those with those
like if
odds,
I was a
I'll throw some
millionaire.
money on the Indian or on the Guardians, and I hope I lose. I do, but I'm not gonna for those odds. If you're gonna be objective, I'm gonna take them. We're facing the most dangerous team in the playoffs that came out of the wild card.
You think so? I don't agree.
Hands down.
I don't agree. I
I
think
mean,
the
the
Mariners
Mariners are.
Yeah.
The Mariners are like
I
the
disagree.
Guardians on steroids. They literally are the same team as the Guardians, but with better players. They
Yeah.
No,
do everything right, but
listen.
they're better.
I don't think they are. I think Cleveland's the most dangerous team coming out of there, especially and the team that we match up against the worst as well.
Why do we match up against them the worst?
Because of how
That I
good their
agree with.
pitching is. Because and if anything, if you want to boil it down, the Yankees have the better lineup. I don't think there's a debate about that. But Cleveland has far and away the better bullpen, and the only reason that we have a little bit of an edge in game one is because they're starting Quantrill. That's why I wished it went to a game 3, because then they would have been forced to throw somebody else out there. But
No, they
they're
would have
gonna have
thrown. They would have
Quantrill,
thrown.
and they-
Oh, you mean in our
they're-
game they would have thrown a different person?
in our
because
game,
would have
they
thrown
probably would have
Quantrill.
been. It would have been Savale probably, and so they're gonna be able to throw Bieber in 2 games now, and which I guess they would have anyway. But now, in 5 games, in game 5 theoretically, it's probably going to be Bieber, And then it's going to be, for us, probably Nestor on 3 days rest.
If we're being honest,
If
though,
it's game 5.
that's
Not to get that
that's
far
also
ahead.
game 2. But yeah, that's a good preview to game 2 because game 2 is Nestor versus Bieber. And if we're being honest, I know we had these conversations all the time, and everybody kind of feels the way that Nestor would. I'd probably feel more confident with Nestor going out there. That's neither here nor there. But I think the general feeling in Yankee land is that Nestor would be their personal game 1 starter, but obviously that won't ever be the case because we're paying Cole this much money. So if the fact that it lines up that way, I would argue that I'm more confident in the Bieber day because it's accidentally lined up with Nestor versus the general way it would shake out with Bieber their 1 versus our quote unquote 1 being Cole in game 1. So I don't know. Do you guys agree with that or no?
I don't know. It's tough because if you also gave me the matchup of Nestor versus Quantrill in game 1, I feel confident in that. And then, you have your number 1 going up against their number 1. And I think it kind of helps us out that Nestor's been as good to be in this conversation, and matching him up with Bieber's great too. But I don't know, man. I don't
Chandler,
know.
what was that like? We were talking about this earlier about Cal Quantrill's
I love how you call him. It's just like it's a new name. Just throw that into the ring here, and it's a new name, a new opportunity to fuck up his name. And
Quantrill.
It's Trill, like Trill. You said Quantro.
Whatever.
Don't call him by his correct name from here on out. Just wanted to throw that in there. But continue.
What's new? What's new? What was his home stats? Aren't his home stats like snipped?
Yeah,
Hasn't
he's never lost a game at home while on the Guardians. He's in 3
Which
years.
is fucking insane.
He's like 16-0 in like 33 games.
All right. Well, at least we're not getting him at home.
Did you say sample size?
Yeah, big sample size.
Oh, I thought you were saying that's a small sample size. Like, I mean,
Far
I
from
don't know. It wasn't like 10 years, but
is that 100%? Like that's a fact.
that's a fact. I double checked. I
That's
heard
insane.
it on MLB Network. I was like, "There's no way." And I
That's
double-checked, so.
crazy.
But the reason that I think we don't match up well though is because our biggest question mark far and away is the bullpen, and that's one of their biggest strengths. They went into a 15-inning game and shut the Rays out for that long. Yeah, they couldn't hit the Rays either, but the bats are going to have to come alive in a big way if we're going to get by Cleveland, and that's not a guarantee.
Sorry, I was just double checking. That is correct. It's insane.
I know you need to win. You need to win game 1. While all their pitchers, they're coming off that big emotional, I guess, sweep, if you want to call the 2-game sweep, but they're coming off that. They just used 16 innings worth of pitchers. Like, if there's a game to win to get out and get momentum, obviously no shit, it's game 1. But when you play a game or a series like this, and you have home field, you can get away with losing game 1, kind of getting punched in the teeth and rebounding because you got 2-3 more games at home. I think with this series, with the state of their bullpen after how they threw it, I know they have a couple days off and everything, but they threw 12 pitchers in one game. You need to get out and you need to shock them a little bit. Not really shock them, but put them in their place, not in like a rude way because they are very good. But you know what I mean? Like, you need to come out and take care of business. You can't come out in game 1 flat. You can't come out in game 1 flat when they're coming off a series like that, I guess is all I'm getting at. Because you come out in a normal series. Look at how we played the Astros in 2019. Also, fun fact, that was our last home game in the playoffs, was that Aaron Hicks home run. But
that's wild.
Like,
I know you said that, but you told it to us before. And I just can't believe that. I know it's true, but that's just insane.
But look at how we came out in that series, right? We came out and we beat the fuck out of the Astros in game 1. And it was like, okay, this is it. This is our season. They came back, and obviously we all know how it went. They won in 6 games. So I don't think this is one of those situations. I think if you come out and you come out flat in game 1 with a team that just had the series that they had, that's really bad. Like, I think that's worse than just a normal loss.
Yeah,
especially when they're going to turn their 1-2 on you. Right.
Exactly. Maybe that's an obvious thing to say because you always want to win game 1. But I just think with the state of their bullpen and how that wild card series played out, like, you're at a severe disadvantage if you have to play a 3-game set before this, which is why I kind of like the wild card series. a little bit.
No, I like it too.
It's kind of it's fun. It was a lot of fun to watch, but it also puts you at it incentivizes you to win your division. It incentivizes you to, go out there and there's something to play for.
Right. That's a ripple that I didn't even think about, is that the new age wild card versus the old wild card, which obviously we've been in enough wild cards and we know how those are. They're very exciting, but it is only one game. And albeit, the Indians only played 2. The only team that played 3 was the Mets at RIP. But that is,
I think it's just as exciting.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
No, I
worried
think
about,
that's what I mean.
Be quite as exciting, and it is, because it's still life or death every game. Like even if you're up 1-0, like that, not getting to that third game is just as important as winning the series.
Yeah. No,
I'm not even thinking from an exciting standpoint.
Yeah, from a detriment.
It has so much impact on what you do going forward in those following series. Like, it changes the way you manage a game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is that it still has that same excitement factor. It's much better when we're not in it, obviously. But I think it incentivizes you more, like you said, Chandler, to win your division, because the detriment to playing a 3-game series to a day with 1 day's rest in between is that much greater when you don't, when you have to play in a 3-game series.
But it's not just winning your division, because if you win your division, like
even that, yeah,
Guardians won their division. It's actually, if anything,
getting a top 2,
it's more that if you win your division, you're not guaranteed a bye. So you need to separate the gap between you and the other 2 best teams in the AL, not just your division. If you have an 8-game lead on the division, you're not going to take a back seat if you're down a game or 2 to the bye, because that's what matters.
And I think that gives us that allows that gives you more of a
just resting everybody in September, which is good for the game. And at first when they expand the playoffs, I was kind of against it, because you don't want teams that are hovering around 500 sneaking in and just kind of staking up the playoffs, because that does nothing for anyone. If you had the fucking Rangers in 2020 or last year, whatever the year was, that they were like 3 games under 500 and a game out of the playoffs, if you have that in there, there's really no room for that. But I think it worked out perfect this year, and I don't think it will going forward, not to this extent. But it really gives you an incentive to go out there and play and they changed the rosters in September. It's not where you can have 40 people anymore. You're not watching AAA teams play each other. I think those kind of coincide, and that, it gives you a more competitive product for an extra month. And it's more fun to watch in October.
And I also think that it makes the entire, every seed that's in it and the ones that are on the outside looking in, obviously they want to make it into the wild cards. The wild cards still exist and expanded so that more teams are being more competitive, or trying to be. But I do think it makes those teams at the top who are winning their division, and they may be winning their division by a lot, i.e. what usually happens in the AL Central and stuff like that. It makes that team have extra stuff to play for, as opposed to what it used to be, because they want that bye because of the same reason. They don't have to play in a wild card series. So after a one real time through, because 2020, and then I don't know, a few times through seeing this new format, I really like it, and I think it's working. So I think that's one thing that I don't know if I want to directly credit Manfred for that, but Manfred and co, this is a win for them, I think. But yeah.
Well, you look this year. I mean, this obviously, like Chandler was saying, won't be every year, but every team that was in the playoff, even with the expansion, deserved to be a playoff team. You look at the teams that got eliminated. Toronto deserved to be a playoff team.
Right, who missed last year too.
Even the Rays, you could maybe argue the Rays might have been one of the worst teams, but they lost 2-0, but they were in games they were in it. They should have been a playoff team. You have the Mets, who had a colossal collapse, but they won 101 games, should have been a playoff team. And then you look at, the Cardinals, and they should have been a playoff team too. So, and everybody else won a playoff series. So everyone that made it this year deserved to be in it, in my opinion.
I have a question. How did so many MLB personalities, people that do this for a living, pick Tampa? Because Murph and I talked about this on the last episode, and I kind of want to revisit it now that this series is over and it went about as we expected. I think on that, both of us agreed that they would be lucky to see 3 games, and there's just really no way. I think it was exactly what we said. There's no possible way that Tampa wins that series, and they didn't, and it wasn't overly competitive. Obviously the scores were close, but they didn't fucking hit. They had 1 run and 7 hits in 23 innings.
You know what I think it was in hindsight?
I don't get how people pick. I don't understand how MLB personalities just overwhelmingly pick the Rays.
It's because of how young Cleveland is. They're the youngest team in baseball.
But that's what Cleveland
Tampa's
does.
been there. Almost everybody on that Tampa roster, especially pitchers have been there, and I think that was what it was.
Yeah.
I don't think it was right, clearly.
That could be it, but also Chandler.
It didn't occur to me at the time. No, that's it. It just didn't occur to me at the time to say it on Monday, or on Thursday. But yeah, I mean, I think that was really what it boiled down to, is that they're the youngest roster in baseball, and that's going to matter. When you're playing postseason games in the Bronx, you have to play. If it goes to 5 games, they're going to have to play 3 in the Bronx, and they're young guys, and they're going to have to hit.
Yeah, and I think another thing as a reason why these not execs, but these media people, the old talking heads, are picking the Rays, because I think there's this, just not even just them, but I feel like across the league, this thought that the Rays are just always gonna Ray and like they're gonna do their thing. It just doesn't matter. Their payroll's always gonna be low, all that stuff. I'd said it before the season. I just don't think their team was that good this year, and I know that's tough to say because it always doesn't look good, and their Rays are always gonna Ray. But I think that's probably why they were picking them, and obviously like maybe Arozarena and his prior World Series and all that stuff. And I don't know. There's a little bit more of known commodities, at least on the pitching side too, with McClanahan, and I know they have Bieber, but they also have Glasnow, but Glasnow wasn't going to go very long.
Great in the postseason, too.
Right, and especially against us too, which we'll preview as well in a sec. But I think it was mainly those top 2 horses that they had in Glasnow coming back. But I don't know, man. I mean, this team, this Guardians team is very good. They're very young. I think that could be. I think you're right. I think that's
underrated for a long time too. That's the reason why the Rays were kind of favored. Not favored, but that they were like they thought it was gonna be a closer series than it actually was. But like Jose Ramirez in general has been the most underrated player for the last like 7 years, I feel like, and it just goes to show it reflects on the team itself too, because
dude just loves Cleveland.
Well, I would argue honestly that Cleveland does the same thing as the Rays and arguably better. Like people praise the Rays year in and they praise the Rays year in and year out about being this pitching factory and how you're just churning out guys like Shane Baz and McClanahan and Glasnow and all these different pitchers, and David Price and Jamie Shields, and just to go back throughout the years. But look at what the Guardians, previously the Indians, have done. They lost Kluber, they lost Bauer, they lost Carrasco, and there's one more I'm missing. But you lose all those guys, and they replace them with Shane Bieber. Clevenger, you replace him with Shane Bieber, with McKenzie, with Plesac, who's pretty damn good, with Savali, who's not bad. I mean, with
all of those deals they made,
and they just continue to churn these guys out. And you got Karinchak in the back, you got Clase in the back. Like every single thing that they do is very Rays-esque. They lost Lindor. Like they're not a high dollar, big market team. They do the same thing. I just feel like they fly under the radar a little more because they don't play in the AL East. They kind of hide a pretty shitty division. Mm-hmm. But I would argue that they do it just about the same, if not better.
I agree. And they seem to pull out bullpen arms out of nowhere the same way the Rays do too, because you have Stefan and Henges and Morgan and all these other guys that come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they're throwing for under 3 ERA each, and you don't want to see them in the middle innings either. And that's where they have bullpen depth too. And during our preview with the Rays, I thought the Rays had a greater bullpen depth. I was wrong. When they went into that 15-inning games, they were putting up guys in the bullpen, bringing them out, and then they were like, oh, this guy had a 2.7 ERA out of the bullpen this year. Cool. Never heard of him. Where'd he come from? And we're going to have to go up against him. Yeah.
Yeah, no, two other names too.
So essential, real quick, that lead. But it's not because the obvious you want to get out to a lead in a playoff series. If you have any advantage, no matter how slight it is, it's now. Like, to go out and take care of that before the bullpen's rested, because, I mean, you got Quantrill, and then you got Bieber and then McKenzie, who Bieber's going to go. I mean, even when we shelled him in the 2020 series, he still went like 6 innings. Like the dude's a horse. He's going to throw in the playoffs, and he's going to throw, I mean, barring just an absolute meltdown, he's going to throw 6 innings. You got to attack them now. You got to get the momentum. You have to go ahead and give yourself that cushion.
Absolutely.
So I was just going to say 2 other deals that we didn't mention, the Corey Kluber trade and the Trevor Bauer trade. So they did it for Clevenger, Bauer, Kluber. What were the other ones you mentioned?
Clevenger,
Carrasco.
They're trading away these. They are they're doing all these deals, which are all looking fantastic. I mean, the Lindor trade, I forget what they got in return for that, but the Kluber one, That ended up being Emmanuel Clase, Delano DeShields. Emmanuel Clase is obviously the big thing there, and they traded them to the Rangers, and the Rangers got like 3 games of Kluber, so that's a fucking huge win. They low-key are fleecing people in these deals. The Mike Clevenger deal, and not to make this just about the Indians front office, but this is crazy because they got Quantrill, they got Naylor, they're getting a bunch of people for just these pitchers that aren't. They seemingly are trading them at the perfect time, so it's kind of crazy.
I mean, we do need to, if we're going to preview a series about them, we do need to praise their front office because that's the exact reason that we're scared of them. Like, people are already looking ahead to, God, I hope Mariners beat the Astros for the CS, or man, I can't wait for revenge against the Astros. I mean, this is no cakewalk. Like, I feel just as confident beating the Guardians as I do, maybe not just as much, but like it's not some massive gap between the Guardians and the Astros where I'm like, I can't wait to get this over so we can get to the CS. Like, I'm sweating thinking about this series. It does not play well into us. It is not a good matchup for us.
Yeah. Wait, one last thing, Murph. On the Lindor deal, they got Andres Jimenez, Ahmed Rosario, Isaiah Green, and Josh Wolf. But the main 2 there is Rosario, who's having a very good year this year, which nobody really knew. He's doing awesome, and Jimenez is the big haul there. But they've been fleecing people for a while now. But
well, what I said last time we recorded, from last week is that lost my train of thought. That's unfortunate.
It's okay.
Well, that's all right. We'll continue. Sorry. It was.
Do you want to get into the lineup preview then?
Yeah.
Well, we're missing a few quick notes before we get into lineup.
Yeah. Why don't you get into those?
You wanted to talk about Chapman before we got into anything.
Right. Let's do that.
Which I guess that would be a good segue into it because what a fucking idiot. I'll just leave it at that. Somebody else could take over because, I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, dude. What do you do? You're a fucking loser, dude. I mean, you're a fucking loser. And that's coming from me, so that hurts.
Yeah, so for context.
Decision for everybody else.
Yeah, for context. And we were talking about this for a while before they made the decision to not have him on the roster. They didn't announce the full roster yet, but they did announce a few pieces of it that, they'll be going with 12 pitchers as opposed to 13 and 13. So they're going to carry one less pitcher and another bat. So that's a couple little housekeeping things, but specifically on Chapman, which is the question we've all been wondering. And we thought, just based on the talent, how bad he's been recently, that we would straight up not have him on the roster. But we thought maybe they would do it just because it's Chapman and how much he's making. And I know they toyed with the idea of the DFAing him. So it was a big question just on the talent alone, like we were saying. But then he said he would attend the mandatory workout if he was going to be on the postseason roster. He wanted them to give him that assurance. The Yankees did not give him that assurance that he would be on the postseason roster. So Chapman stayed home in Miami. The Yankees told him to stay there. So I think that would be probably the end of Aroldis Chapman's postseason, or Aroldis Chapman's Yankees career. I know they didn't rule him out yet for the ALCS roster if we end up going that far, but I think that probably I would rule him out personally because, like we were saying, I don't think he would have made it on his own merit alone. And then on top of that, he just showed that he's just like, I mean, where do you get the gall for just asking for that assurance? And then if they don't give you that assurance because you haven't been good, like you didn't earn that. You didn't earn the assurance to be on the roster. And the very fact that you're asking if you're going to be on the roster means you think you're not good enough to be on the roster, that you have that question in your mind because you suck. So like, I don't understand where he gets this like false sense of attitude. I know it's previous Chapman and he thinks he's still that guy, but I mean, it's just, I don't know.
Well, he knew he was on the cusp for the same reason that we all did. And it's that they never confirmed whether or not he'd be on the roster beforehand. And if he was pitching the way that the guys who are locks would be, if they asked Boone if, say, Holmes is going to be on